Hello and welcome to this Plan7Architect tutorial. In this video, I guide you step by step on how a complete beginner can plan their own house. We'll start by opening a completely blank project and then take our first look at the user interface. At the very top of the screen, you'll find several sections, commonly referred to as tabs. With these, we can switch between various functions and different views. We are currently in construction mode, the main view for drawing floor plans. If you click on the 3D tab here, you will switch to 3D mode, where you can also see your building in 3 dimensions. In the Terrain tab, you are able to edit the terrain, and through the 2D Views tab, you can generate various perspectives and sections. You can even put together an entire plan, for instance, for a building permit application. I will demonstrate this to you later on in the video. Additionally, there's the 2D Elements tab, which allows you to create two-dimensional drawings. Within this tab, you'll find various line options and also the guide function for creating helpful guidelines. You can edit floor plans in the Edit tab. In the Trim tab, for example, you can split or trim walls. The Dimensions tab contains all functions for manual dimensioning. Plan7Architect also has automatic dimensioning, if you prefer that. And now that you have a general understanding of the interface, we'll move on to the user manual and the window settings. I'm briefly switching back to construction mode. For newcomers, go to Help in the upper right corner and click Help Topics. This opens the comprehensive user manual in a separate window with detailed explanations of the user interface and clear step-by-step instructions for various functions. The manual is divided into various main topics, as you can see here on the left. When you click on the plus sign, the subtopics will appear. You'll then find them and be able to read them. One of the most important features you'll find in the manual is the search bar. You simply click on Search at the top of the page and then enter a specific term, for example, construction. The manual is searched, and articles containing your search term will appear. Double-click an article, and it opens up, so you can read the information. Your search term will be highlighted in blue within the text. I'll close the manual again and go back to Help in the top right and click on Shortcut Keys. You can examine the keyboard shortcuts in more detail there. Now I'll show you how to work in 2D and 3D modes simultaneously. To do this, you'll go up to Window Arrangement at the very top, then select Layout, and then click on Two Windows tile vertically. This opens two windows. Left shows 2D mode, right shows 3D mode. You can also personalize the windows. Click on one of the windows and then select a new function from the tab at the top, for example, 2D Views. In the center, you can easily drag the window sizes to make them narrower or wider. It's also possible to open multiple windows, for example, 3 or even 4. For that, simply go back to Window Arrangement, click the arrow, select Layout, and then choose a layout to use. You can also open your own windows. To do this, return to Single Window mode. Go to Window Arrangement, click New Window, and then tile vertically again. We have an additional video that explains this step by step. Now I'll go back to 3D mode. To change your viewing direction, press and hold the mouse wheel, then move the mouse. That's how you turn. Zooming in and out also works with the mouse wheel. If you additionally hold down the Control key and the mouse wheel, you'll stay in the same position. This is practical when you want to navigate in tight areas. More keyboard shortcuts for the 3D mode can be found on the website under Help or in the manual. With this, you've learned how to find help, how to use the window layout side by side, and how to open multiple windows. Next, I'd like to give you a look at the lower function bars. In the bottom right area, you'll find access to snap and grid points, plus several other useful functions you can easily enable or disable. For example, you can turn the grid display on or off. You can also select from various snap points, and then you have the option to either activate or deactivate them as needed. To give you a practical example of how this works, if you decide to turn on features like Snap to Grid or Angular Snap, your line will then automatically align itself with the nearest grid points, or it will consistently maintain the correct angle you've set. I'll quickly show you how it works in practice. If I want to draw a wall and begin at the starting point, the snap ensures that the wall begins at the nearest grid point and that the line ends at the nearest grid point. In the bottom bar, you can adjust the display options. With Display Outer Dimensions, you can turn outer measurements on or off. When you hover your mouse over a button, its function name appears. That way, you'll always know what you're selecting. Further options, such as the Advanced View functions, give you additional visibility. You can determine whether the floor plan is displayed as a line drawing or if textures from the 3D mode are visible by going to Mapped 2D View and clicking Show There. In the bottom left, input dx to set the length and dy to define the angle of an element. You're now familiar with these fundamentals. Next, we'll explore the Story/Layer Management System and the catalogs, where you'll find everything to organize your model and quickly locate components. On the far right, you'll find both the Story Manager and the Layer Manager, two important helpers to keep your home well organized. First, the Story Manager. Here, you choose which specific floors you wish to view. In the bottom right corner, you'll find three distinct options under Visible Stories: All, Selected, and Current. Selecting All will allow you to see every single floor simultaneously. With the Selected option, you have the ability to individually toggle floors on or off. Simply click the eye icon right next to the floor. Current only shows what is currently active. You select the active story using the blue dot. Next is the Layer Manager. It functions like the stories, but at the component level. All the same options are available here. With Selected, you can easily toggle individual layers on or off. Just click the eye icon next to each layer. The Current view only shows what is currently active. You select the active layer by clicking on the blue dot. Every element belongs to a specific layer. Hiding a layer hides all objects on it. Now let's move on to the catalogs. The 3D Objects catalog holds database objects neatly sorted into folders. Double-click a folder to open it. You can drag objects into construction mode and place them precisely with a left click. To go back to other folders, click the Folder Above option. You can also import your own objects from SketchUp's 3D Warehouse. There's a separate tutorial for that. Next, we'll move on to the Symbol catalog. Here you'll find symbols and ready-made projects. For example, in the Electrical folder, specifically for electrical planning. In the Garages/Carports folder, you will discover ready-made carports or garages that you can easily insert with a left click, and which are also clearly visible in the 3D mode. In 3D mode, you'll find the Comprehensive Material Catalog. You can choose various materials and textures and apply them to building elements by clicking a texture and dragging it onto the target element. You can also incorporate your own custom textures, and a dedicated tutorial covers this process. With these features, you'll stay well organized and quickly locate all building components and specific details. So, by now, you're familiar with all the most important catalogs and understand how to effectively bring objects into your model. Now let's take a closer look at some additional useful areas located in the top left of the interface. In that area, you'll discover the previous options, which will assist you in undoing steps, or you can simply use the convenient keyboard shortcut Ctrl+Z. With the Show All option, you can easily center the floor plan on your screen, especially if you happen to lose sight of your drawing within the overall project. When you select a function like Wall, you can then specify here whether walls should be drawn as a simple line or as a polygon. The same principle applies to windows and doors. You can adjust width, height, and sill level depending on the active function. Below this section, you'll find additional options for the current function, including the comprehensive catalog with various wall constructions. You can also create and save your own custom wall constructions. There's an additional tutorial specifically for this. In the catalog, the walls, doors, and windows are all stored in meters. This might appear confusing, but it's not an issue, because when you're drawing, you can immediately input the correct thickness and length in your chosen unit. You can input these specific values right here. This catalog functions just like the other catalogs that we have already seen. If you only see a limited number of doors within the Door function, please click on Folder Above in the catalog to display the other folders or available options. You now have a first impression of the user interface. Next, I'll demonstrate how to modify the scale and units within the software. To change the unit of measurement, we must first enter construction mode and then proceed to modify the settings. Please open the Unit/Scale window, which you will find conveniently located right next to the print function. Here you can set the scale with the Scale option. For example, set it to 1 to 50 so that every line has the appropriate visual scale. To change the unit of measurement, open Unit of Measurement and select meters or feet. I'm selecting feet and confirming with OK. The next step is to open Interactive Dimensions. To do this, you'll click Options in the top right corner and then choose Interactive Dimensions. In that window, I will go to the Measured Value tab and check the unit once more. Under Use this unit of measurement, the checkbox should be selected, and I will set it to feet. Then I will confirm again by clicking OK. Units are now set to feet, and the scale has been adjusted accordingly. When drawing, you can enter length measurements in feet and see how everything interacts. If you later wish to switch units, simply repeat these steps and choose a different unit or a new scale. With that, the basic settings are complete, and next we'll move on to the planning steps for building a house using Plan7Architect. Before we start building the house, I'll quickly show you another important feature: how you can customize the grid. It helps you draw straight lines and estimate distances better. For that, I'll go to Options in the top right. In the Options menu, you'll generally find a number of settings that you can adjust. Some of these things you can easily switch on or off there. To customize the grid, I'll click right here on Grid. A window for the grid settings will now open. In this window, I can define how the grid is laid out, for instance, by specifying the numerical values for both the X and Y axes. You can rotate the grid using the Grid Rotation option in the menu. And I can set the angle. This is the grid angle. Once everything is set up the way I need it, I click OK. The grid is now adjusted. Now the units, scale, and the grid are prepared. Next, we'll start with the house. We'll begin with the floor plan and draw the first walls. But before I start, I'll just quickly tidy up. First, I'll select everything that I've drawn so far, so we can truly start from scratch. Then I'll press the Delete key on my keyboard, and all the selected items will be removed. We'll start with the ground floor. If I go to the Story Manager on the right-hand side, we can see that the ground floor is already predefined for us. Now, if I click on the ground floor, which means I'm selecting it, and then click on Edit Selected Story, a new window will open up. In this window, I can adjust important heights, for example, the floor level, the ceiling thickness, and the clear height. If I check the Lock Story Level box, the finished floor level always remains at 0.00. This is practical because you then have a fixed zero line and won't accidentally shift your heights while planning. Now, I have a clean workspace again, and I can properly begin. We'll stay in construction mode and first choose the wall component. Next, I'll go into the catalog and choose a suitable wall. Here you'll find various wall types, for example, interior walls or exterior walls. You can also create and save your own wall structures. There's a separate tutorial for that. For example, I am now selecting an exterior wall. Then, I set how I want to draw the wall and choose the polygon option. Now I draw the wall. While drawing, I can set the direction of the wall. To do this, I press the W key. This allows me to decide whether the wall should be to the right, in the middle, or to the left of the grid. This is important so that the wall is exactly where you want it to be later. If I want to draw a specific length, I can simply enter the length via the keyboard, and if I want to set a specific angle, I press the Tab key. Then I can adjust the angle of the wall accurately. When I'm done with a piece of wall, I click once with the left mouse button to place it, or press the Enter key. So I'm going to draw all the walls for the ground floor, step by step. Once all of the walls have been completely finished, I then simply proceed to exit the polygon drawing function by pressing the Escape key on my keyboard. Finally, down here, I'll turn on outer dimensions so the external measurements are displayed. And down here, under Display Fills, I can turn the wall fills on or off. That's practical, depending on whether you prefer to see the floor plan clearly as lines or with filled wall surfaces. Now that the exterior walls for the ground floor are completed, we'll move on to the interior walls. I'll go back into the catalog and select an interior wall to use, for example, this one here. So it's clear that the exterior wall and interior wall can indeed have very different wall constructions. To ensure the interior walls sit neatly and perfectly straight, I'm now using a very helpful drawing function. I select the function Draw Wall Parallel to Reference Line. This function helps you draw a wall exactly parallel to an existing wall edge at a very specific distance. First, I click on a wall edge that the new interior wall will be parallel to. Afterwards, I'll enter the exact distance, that is, how far the inner wall must start from this edge. Then I click the starting point of the inner wall, directly enter the desired length, and confirm with the Enter key. That completes the inner wall. Now I'll draw the next inner wall in the same way, again using the parallel function. Sometimes a wall might end up too long. That's not a problem. We'll correct it immediately. To shorten a wall, use the Trim command by pressing the T key. Then select the wall segments you want to retain. The wall is automatically trimmed to the correct length. Next, use the Draw Simple Wall function to add another interior wall, for example, to create a new room and divide the floor plan logically and efficiently. Lastly, I'll show you how to extend a wall. For this, I'll first draw two interior walls, again using the parallel function, so we have a clear example. If I notice that a wall needs to be made longer, I simply press the G key. After that, I can easily grab the wall and pull it in the desired direction until it has precisely the correct length. This way, you can quickly modify your walls without needing to redraw them completely from scratch. Now that the interior walls are up and the ground floor rooms are becoming clearer, we'll move on to the next major building element, the window. For the window component, you have a very extensive catalog. This means you can choose from many different window types. But for now, we'll use a standard window. With this window, I can adjust the width, height, sill level, and also the lintel height. Next, I select the Position Windows at a Distance function from the top menu. This allows me to position a window at a fixed distance from a point on the wall. First, I click the reference point on the wall. Just like with walls, I can also use the W key here to set how the window is positioned relative to the mouse, right, center, or left. Then, I select the direction in which the window should open. Once everything is correct, I click once with the left mouse button and then enter the desired distance from the reference point. The window will now be installed precisely at this location. What's practical is that this specific distance is stored until I input a new measurement. This enables me to very quickly place multiple windows of the same type using the exact same spacing. If I want to, I can, of course, also choose another window type from the catalog and draw it in the very same way. If I want to place a window precisely in the center of a wall, I'll use a different option. For that, I activate Draw Windows and then click on the wall. Now I move the mouse over the wall. As soon as I see a pink small triangle as a guide, I can tell that the window is perfectly centered. Then, I can place it exactly there. After I have drawn the windows, we'll quickly check the result in 3D mode. That way, I can immediately tell if the window heights are correct. If I notice a window's sill level isn't right, I can quickly fix it by clicking that window and adjusting the sill level at the top, under sill level. This allows me to precisely adjust each window, step by step, until everything looks perfectly even and correct. After checking the windows in 3D mode and adjusting the sill level as needed, we'll now move on to the doors. To do that, we'll switch back to construction mode and select the door component. First, I'll go back to the catalog. There you'll find a wide selection of different exterior doors and various interior doors. Starting with an exterior door, I'll place it freely in the exterior wall by clicking the wall at the desired spot and then aligning it precisely to fit the entrance. Next, I'll place the interior doors, with several options for drawing and positioning each door. For example, I can search for the exact center of a wall to place the door precisely in the middle. Alternatively, I can position a door at a specific distance from a reference point to ensure all doors in the house are uniformly aligned. The process works exactly the same as with the windows. Should you need more details, there is a separate, comprehensive tutorial focusing entirely on doors and windows. It clearly explains all opening functionalities and shows, step by step, how to draw doors and windows both cleanly and correctly. Once we've installed the doors, we're still missing a very important structural component on the ground floor, so that we can later access the upper floor. We need a staircase. For this, I'll stay in construction mode and go to the stairs component. Just like with windows and doors, there's also a catalog here with various staircase designs. The advantage is that you often have suitable details like surface and railings already included. I'm now taking a straight staircase as an example, but you can also switch between other staircase types up here at any time. Now I'm going to place the staircase step by step. First, I click on the spot where the staircase should begin. This is the starting point. Next, I drag the staircase to the desired length, and then I set its width. Once that's right, I'll complete the entry by pressing the escape key. If I want to make more precise adjustments to the staircase, I'll switch to 3D mode to check. From there, I click on the staircase and then select Staircase from the top left menu. The Stair Settings window is now opening. Here, for example, I can disable the automatic stair function. Additionally, I have the option to set the start and end points as unfixed. This enables me to manually adjust the rise and tread depth, and the entire staircase will then automatically reconfigure itself. The ceiling opening is equally important to ensure the staircase can truly extend through the ceiling into the floor above. Plan7Architect normally creates a suitable opening that fits the stairs right away. If I want to keep that, I'll leave it as is. If I want to do things differently, I'll go into the settings, select slab opening, and then choose none slab opening there. In that particular case, I can then, in construction mode, draw the opening myself using the ceiling opening function. For example, if I prefer that the first step of the staircase isn't immediately visible from the upper floor. With that done, the staircase is now positioned and the stair opening has been prepared. Once we've added an upper floor later, we'll see the stairs through the ceiling opening. Now that the staircase is installed and the stairwell opening has been prepared, we'll next turn our attention to the rooms. You might already see that Plan7Architect automatically recognizes a room and even directly displays its square footage. But often, a room isn't yet defined exactly how you'd really like it to be. A good example is this large room. I want to separate the kitchen, living, and dining areas, but not build a real wall, as it should remain visually open. That's exactly what the virtual wall is for. I click up here on Virtual Wall and simply place this virtual wall between two existing walls. This creates two separate rooms in the plan. However, when I later switch to 3D mode, it still appears as one continuous space. The next thing we still need to add are the room designations. It's important to understand that rooms in Plan7Architect function as their own distinct building components, just like walls, windows, and doors. I click on a room, then go to the catalog. There, for example, I can choose from various room types. I now go through each room, select the appropriate type, and the room's name and texture are automatically set accordingly. If the room name is displayed in German for you, just as it is for me, you can also manually change it at the top, at any point in time. Additionally, you have the option to individually customize the texture. For example, if you don't like the texture of the kitchen, you simply select a different one from the catalog, and, if needed, adjust the room's name. Once all rooms have been defined, I then go into the 3D mode for a final check. There, I can clearly see how the textures have been applied. After defining the rooms and checking them in 3D mode, let's briefly look at some display options for the ground floor before moving on to the upper floor. To do that, I'll go back to construction mode. Right now, the simple display mode is still active, but if I want to see the wall structure of the multi-layered wall, I go up to the Project tab and then click on Details. There, I can adjust the level of detail. For example, I'll now select Medium, and immediately the wall constructions in the floor plan are displayed more precisely. Next, I can also display the textures in the floor plan that we assigned earlier via the room data. For that, I'll go down to the Advanced View functions, then to Mapped 2D View, and activate Show There. Now, you can see the textures directly in the 2D view. If you'd prefer to go back to a very simple line drawing, you can simply turn this function off again. And there's another display mode that's very nice for presentations. If I go to Layout under the Advanced View functions, I can have the floor plan displayed as a sketch. I can then save this sketch view as a PDF or an image file. This lets you display your floor plan either in a technical, precise way or in a simpler, more visually appealing style, depending on the situation. Now we'll continue with the upper floor by going back to the Story Manager on the right and clicking Add New Story above the current one. I'm calling this new floor Upper Story. Then I'll go to Copied Walls and can select which elements from the ground floor should be copied. For example, I only want to copy the exterior walls, as well as the windows and doors. But if I prefer, I can also copy all of the walls. I'll confirm my selection, and the upper floor will then be created. In order to get a better overall view for my drawing work, I'm now only going to display this particular floor. To do this, I set Current One under Visible Stories, so only the upper floor is shown, and I can work cleanly and efficiently. Next, I'll position the interior walls again by using the parallel function as on the ground floor. Then draw the walls at the correct distance. I'm going to add a few more walls now, using the Draw Simple Wall feature, so that the rooms can be created precisely in the way that I truly want them to be. Now, I'd like to break open a section of this wall to create a new hallway. For this, I'll go to the Trim tab and select the Break function there. Then, I'll click on the specific point on the wall where I intend to break it through. This allows me to easily remove the part of the wall that I no longer need. And at this location, I have an opening for the corridor. Once the walls are done, we'll move on to the doors. First, I'll delete this exterior door, as we won't need it upstairs. Upstairs, we'll only be placing interior doors. I'll go back to the catalog, choose my preferred interior door, and insert it into the walls using the Position Doors at Distance function. If I accidentally set the opening direction incorrectly, I can always change it in the Windows and Doors settings by adjusting the direction there. After that, we'll continue with the windows. I can click a window and move it if only a small adjustment is needed, or reposition it precisely using the Position Windows at a Distance function, just as we did on the ground floor. Once all windows are accurately placed, we'll redefine the rooms on the upper floor again to ensure all room data is correct and up to date. To do this, I first click on a room, then go to the catalog and select the appropriate room type. I repeat this room by room until everything is correctly named and set up. After that, we'll look at the final result in 3D mode. I'll switch to the 3D mode for this, and then I'll check the model. If only the upper floor is currently displayed, I'll go back to the Story Manager and set Visible Stories to All. All floors are now displayed, and we can take a detailed look at how the floor plan and the entire house appear in 3D. Now that we've viewed the house, with its ground and upper floors, in 3D mode, we'll continue with the roof. To do this, I'm heading back into construction mode. So I can work precisely, I'll set the Story Manager again to only have the upper floor active. This way, the roof will fit this floor precisely later, and I won't lose track. The next step is to select the roof component. Just like with other components, I can select a suitable roof from the catalog here. For example, I can use the option where the roof outline is automatically detected for the entire house. After that, I click on Roof in the top left, and a window with the roof settings will open. In this window, I then navigate to the Roof Side tab. There, I can select each roof side individually and adjust it precisely. So I click on a roof side and change, for example, the overhang, the height, and the pitch. If I like these values, I click on Own Settings for all assignments, so that these settings are applied to all roof sides. I'll now switch to 3D mode and check how the roof currently appears. I don't quite like this roof shape, and I'd like to construct the roof for our house a little differently. In one area, for instance, I don't want a simple slope, but a gable. For this roof section, I'll set the appropriate type and carefully adjust the overhang. On the opposite side, I'll do the same, adding the gable and the overhang there as well. At the front, I don't want a simple roofline. I'd prefer a prominent gable. So, I'll set the values accordingly there as well. After that, I'll check again in the 3D mode to see if the shape looks exactly the way I want it to. If I wish, I can also have the wooden roof structure displayed. For that, I go down to the button labeled Show Wood Framework, and then activate the checkbox under Show. Then the wooden construction of the roof is displayed to me, which can be extremely helpful, especially for more precise planning. Now, in the 3D mode, something else is noticeable. The walls have not yet been trimmed to the roof. To solve this problem, I'll go back into the Story Manager, select the upper floor, and then click on Edit Selected Story. There, I will locate the setting called Clearance. Here, I'll enter a value that is definitely higher than the highest point of the gable. Once I confirm this, the walls will be correctly adjusted to the roof, and the roof will be cleanly trimmed with the walls. If you'd like to learn more roof shapes later, there's also an extra tutorial for that. It explains step by step how you can draw and correctly set up various roof types. Now that the roof is properly in place and the walls are neatly trimmed right up to it, we're still missing a crucial component that's simply not present in the 3D model: the foundation. To do this, I'll first go back into the Story Manager and highlight the ground floor. Then I click on Add New Bottom Story and create a new story below the ground floor. I'm going to name this Foundation. Now I'll enter the most important values. For structural, I'll input 1 foot. For clearance, 2.62. And for floor, I'll enter 0. If we're now in 3D mode, we can see that the building isn't resting on the landscape. For this, I'm going to edit the ground floor and set the ground floor value to 0. If we look down in 3D mode, you'll notice that there's currently nothing visible below the ground. And that's exactly what we're going to change right now. I'm marking the new foundation level in the Story Manager to make it my active level. After that, I'll go back into construction mode so I can draw the foundation to fit the ground floor exactly. I set by Visible Stories to Selected. Now I can choose myself which stories I want to see. I make the ground floor and the foundation visible. Then, for the locked stories, I set all of them to visible, except for the active story. This way, I can clearly see the ground floor as a template while preventing any accidental edits, which is ideal for cleanly tracing the entire foundation. Following this, I click again on the wall component and go into the catalog. There are already saved foundation walls, and I'll select a suitable one. Next, I'll click Options in the top left, as I need to set an offset. I'll check the box for Insert with Offset and then input an offset of 0 feet, 3.94 inches. As a starting point, I'll select the left side. After that, I click on the plan at the inner point of the ground floor wall. Then, using the W key, I adjust the wall's position so that the foundation wall aligns with the inner point of the ground floor wall. And finally, with the polygon function, I draw the entire foundation perimeter. The foundation is now drawn with a 0 feet, 3.94 inches offset. Now I'll take a look at the result in 3D mode. To better see the foundation, I can click on Advanced View Functions at the bottom and hide the landscape. This gives me a much clearer view of the entire building, including the foundation. Next, I'd like to slightly lower the foundation's level so that we can then accurately draw in the floor slab. To do this, I'll click on a foundation wall and then navigate to Construction at the top. A new window will open, and I'll proceed to the Elevations tab. There, I will place a check mark next to the option Use Different Levels from the Story. Next, I'll set the wall to go up to the bottom edge of the structural ceiling. I'll close the window again. So I don't have to set this for every foundation wall individually, I'll now apply it to the others. For that, I'll go to the Edit tab at the top and click Acquire. Then, I'll first click on the foundation wall that I've just correctly configured, then select Elevations from there, and then click on the other foundation walls, one after another. In this way, all foundation walls receive the same height values. Finally, we draw the floor slab. For this, I go back to Construction mode and select the ceiling component and use the polygon function. Then, I draw the foundation ceiling as the floor slab. If I now switch back to the 3D mode, you can clearly see the base plate and observe how the foundation and the base plate look together within the model. So, now that the foundation is clearly visible within our model, we can once again dedicate our full attention to the specific details of the house. My next step is to draw a French balcony for the floor windows on the upper story, which essentially functions as a safety barrier. To achieve this, I will return to the construction mode and, within the Story Manager, ensure that only the upper floor is both visible and active. Then, I will proceed to select the railing component, which is the guardrail, and carefully choose an appropriate railing design from the available catalog. These railings can be placed freely, just like any other object, but they are also perfectly suited as fall protection in front of floor-to-ceiling windows. I place the railing with 2 clicks, meaning a start point and an end point, and when I'm done, I simply finish the input with the Escape key. Afterwards, I briefly switch to 3D mode to check how the fall protection looks on the window. Now, I'd like to add an additional small balcony to the front. This balcony will be constructed from several components, such as supports, a balcony slab, and a railing. First, I'll draw the supports. For this, I'll activate the ground floor in the Story Manager, because we'll be building the load-bearing elements cleanly from the bottom up. Then I select the column component, go into the catalog, search for a suitable column, and then place these columns at the desired locations. I can easily place them freehand by simply clicking on the position. Next, I will draw the balcony slab. To do this, I select the Ceiling or Slab Building component and use the Rectangle tool to quickly and accurately draw the slab. It's important here that I draw the ceiling function on the ground floor, so the ceiling is later in the correct position. After that, I switch back to 3D mode and look at how the balcony slab and the columns look together. If I notice that the balcony slab should be higher, I click on the ceiling and adjust its height accordingly at the top. After that, the columns need to be adjusted so they reach the slab again. To do this, I click one of the supports, go to Dimensions/Level, and check Use Different Levels from the Story, then enter a value, for example, 1 foot upward. I repeat the same steps for the second column to ensure both are set identically. If I choose to, I can additionally provide the columns with a column base. For this purpose, I navigate to Column Capitals/Bases, place a check mark next to Column Base, and subsequently choose an appropriate column base. Following that, I adjust the Level Reference of Object to Top Level to ensure that the alignment is perfectly correct, and I can then observe the column base directly on the model. Now, only the railing for the balcony is missing. To do that, I'll go back into construction mode, and in the Story Manager, set the upper floor as the active story, then select the railing component again. After that, I'll draw the railing once around the balcony area. Once I've finished my input, I press the Escape key again to complete the process. In 3D mode, we can now view the entire balcony structure, including the supports, the main slab, and the protective railing. There is also a separate supplementary tutorial on drawing balconies that shows, step by step, how to build and precisely configure a balcony to your specifications. Now that the house and balcony are finished, the exterior design is still missing. So, next we'll take care of the terrain around the house. For this purpose, I will be utilizing the Terrain mode, as it provides a wide array of functions for designing the exterior and incorporating various objects. Before I switch over to the Terrain mode, I'll first navigate to the 2D Elements tab and draw in a few helpful guidelines. I only do this to get a good distance from the house, so the terrain isn't too close to the walls. For instance, I set guidelines 20 feet up and down and 45 feet left and right. This gives me a clear guide for where the terrain should start. Then I switch to Terrain mode, select the Terrain Area function, use the Rectangle tool, and draw the property around the house so it fits. Afterwards, I'll quickly check everything in 3D mode to confirm the plot is properly defined as a surface. Then we can add more exterior details in various ways. For example, by using 3D objects from the catalogs, such as plants or other decorative elements. We also have what are called 3D bitmaps, images that always rotate to face the camera, so they display correctly in 3D mode, even though they're essentially flat, two-dimensional objects. I'm going to place a few objects on the site now, just as an example, until it looks suitable for a first impression. Once I'm happy with the terrain and the objects, the house will then get a suitable texture. For that, I'll go back into 3D mode and open the Material Catalog. There, in the Materials folder, you'll find different textures for inside and out. For example, I'll choose a brickwork texture and assign it solely to the ground floor, so you can immediately see how individual areas can be specifically designed in different ways. I can also adopt textures. That's especially practical if you want to make something exactly the same. To do this, I use the grab function at the top. For example, I click the brickwork texture and then apply it to the balcony. This way, I don't have to search for the same texture. I can simply copy it directly. Once the terrain and textures are complete, I'll now show you how to create in Plan7Architect sections and views, and how you can print them out later. To do this, I'll return to the construction mode, then click Section at the top, and define the section with 2 left clicks, first by selecting the starting point and then the ending point. The direction you draw matters. If I draw the line from top to bottom, the cut will face to the right, and if I draw it from bottom to top, the cut will face to the left. The same principle applies to a cross-section. Right after that, a dedicated settings window opens where I can, for example, change the designation and precisely set the scale. Under Display, I can also choose whether the technical section is shown in black and white, selecting between options like Covered Borders, Analytic, or a view with shadows and textures. For that, I choose the option Shading with Borders, Analytic. Here, I'm choosing the technical representation, and if needed, I can still configure which layers and stories are visible under Viewable Layer and Viewable Stories. With Lines View, I can also adjust line thicknesses. In the cross-section area, I can again change the label and set a specific depth in case the section shouldn't extend infinitely into the model. Under the Cross-Section Lines option, I specify which line settings are to be used, either uniformly through the default settings or separately for each element. And once everything is set, I confirm with OK. The section is now created and automatically saved under 2D views. There you will later find all other sections and views as well. If you want to change any settings, simply select the section and adjust it via the top Options menu in 2D views. If you'd like to add more to the section afterward, you can use the Line or Polygon Line tool under 2D Elements to draw additional lines. For dimensioning, switch to the Dimensions tab. There, you can place elevation points by selecting the Elevation Point function and clicking directly in your section view. In the level settings at the top, you can then define what the point should reference. For example, specific component edges, such as the bottom side. You can create your own dimension chains using the Distance tool. It is crucial that your sections and views remain connected to the 3D model. This means if anything changes in the model, you can simply click Calculate in your 2D views, and the section will be automatically updated. If you want the section as a pure 2D drawing made of individual lines, you use the Explode function in 2D views. And it's best to do this only at the very end, when the planning is truly complete. Besides sections, you can also generate normal views in the 2D views area. Click New 2D View at the top and choose, for example, a front view. There, set the display type under Display, Technical View, or a view with shadows and textures. You can then save and organize these views and use them later for printing. There's also a separate tutorial on creating sections and views that explains the process step by step. Finally, I'll show you how to compile a plan in Plan7Architect, for example, for a presentation or for construction documents. I'll stay in the 2D Views tab and first create a new view. I'll choose the free view because then I get a blank white sheet with nothing on it yet. In the Settings window, I can directly select the scale. I click the paper size setting at the top, choose, for example, A1, and set the layout to landscape. Then, when I enable the Borders option at the top, the page margins are displayed. I'll quickly zoom out a little bit so that I can see the entire sheet, and I'll switch off the grid at the bottom because we currently don't require it for the plan layout. Now I have a clear view of a blank sheet, which I can then export or print later on. Next, I will insert a frame and, if necessary, a title block. For that, I go right into the Symbols catalog and open the folder Plan Headers Legends. You'll often find pre-made frames there, for example, for A1. I choose the appropriate frame. To ensure it fits perfectly on the edges, I press the W key again and align it neatly. Then I click once with the left mouse button to place the frame, and then the Escape key. If I wish, I can also insert a text box from the symbol catalog. Alternatively, I can create my own text boxes and text by drawing a field with lines in 2D Elements and adding my label using the Text function. Now the content comes into play. For this, I'll go back to the 2D Views section and create another new 2D view, this time as a project view, so I can see a complete floor plan. If I only want to display a specific floor, I simply click the Story option at the very top. Then a window opens where I can choose which floor level should be visible, for example, the entire ground floor. After that, I'll only see the detailed floor plan for the ground floor. The key point is that this view is directly linked to the 3D model. If you later make changes to the model and then click Calculate, the floor plan will update automatically. I can also use layers to define which ones are visible. For this, I set Visible Layers to Selected and can then show or hide individual layers with the eye icons. To insert the floor plan into my drawing, I'll first make a copy. I go to Management at the top and click Duplicate. In this copy, I explode the floor plan so that it is no longer connected to the 3D model and will not automatically change anymore. After that, I select the floor plan and copy it either with Ctrl+C or by right-clicking and choosing Copy. Then I go back to the free view, the empty sheet, and paste it using Ctrl+V or by right-clicking and selecting Insert. Now the floor plan is placed on the sheet. Similarly, I can also insert other floors into the plan if I want to display them separately. If I need to add dimensions to the plan, I switch to the Dimensions tab and can set my own dimension chains using the Distance tool. If I prefer to dimension automatically, I can set that in the construction mode and later output it using the print function. Following this, I'm going to include some additional views, such as a section and a different view. The section I just created, I'll copy it exactly like that and paste it into the sheet. It works the same way with a view. If I explode the view beforehand, a white background is automatically created. I can either delete it by clicking it and pressing the Delete key, or I can leave it in for now. If this background, however, covers something within my plan layout, I can simply move it to the very back. To achieve this, I select the specific object that is affected, and then I press the Ctrl and H key on my keyboard, which will then place it directly into the background. After that, I can arrange the layout neatly until everything is easy to read. If I want, I can add labels at the end by going back to 2D elements and using the text function. Of course, I can adjust the font size and type until it looks good and is easy to read. Once everything is done, I can print the plan using the Print button at the top, or from the 2D Views section, I can export it as a PDF or DXF. And that's all there is to it. You've now received a concise overview of how to use Plan7 Architect, from the initial settings to your finished plan.